Dr. Amanda Cooper gripped the podium's edges, her knuckles white, as she watched the Mazzari delegation rise from their seats. Their iridescent robes caught the United Nations chamber's lights, creating a hypnotic display that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. The lead diplomat, Ambassador Vexel, fixed his 4 eyes upon her with an expression she'd learned to recognize as contempt. The human species, Vexel's translator hummed, represents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Your historical analysis matrix reveals a species obsessed with conflict, perpetually developing new methods of warfare even in times of peace. Amanda fought to keep her voice steady. Ambassador, you're misinterpreting our data. Yes, humanity has a complex relationship with conflict, but we've also shown remarkable progress in. We have analyzed the footage of your Major James Harrison and his actions during your Kashmir conflict. Vexel interrupted. A single human warrior chose to engage against impossible odds rather than surrender. Your media celebrates this as heroism. Our cultural integration network labels it as evidence of evolutionary instability. The chamber erupted in murmurs as holographic displays materialized around the room, showing footage of Harrison's last stand. Amanda watched with a mixture of pride and concern as the images played out. A lone soldier holding a strategic mountain pass against overwhelming odds, buying time for civilian evacuations with nothing but determination and ingenious use of terrain. What you see as instability, Ambassador, we recognize as sacrifice. General Michael Roberts spoke up from his seat in the military observers section. Major Harrison saved over 3,000 civilians that day. By employing tactical innovations that your species had previously labeled as obsolete, Vexel's secondary translator chimed in. Primitive projectile weapons, improvised explosives, physical combat. The Major rejected available drone support in favor of what you call boots-on-the-ground methodology. Amanda noticed the shift in the Mazzari's posture, their characteristic sign of reaching a conclusion. She'd spent months studying their behavioral patterns, and everything about their current stance screamed danger. The Mazzari Empire has reached a consensus, Vexel announced. Earth requires guidance. Your species must be shepherded away from its self-destructive tendencies. We will begin the integration process immediately. Integration. Amanda's blood ran cold. Ambassador, that wasn't part of our diplomatic framework. Earth has expressed interest in joining the galactic community as equals, not subjects. The Mazzari delegation moved in perfect unison toward the chamber's exit, their crystalline technology floating around them like a swarm of luminous insects. Your equality must be earned through evolution beyond primitive conflict responses. Until then, we will provide the necessary oversight. General Roberts was already on his secure line as the chamber descended into chaos. Amanda could see similar reactions around the room. Chinese diplomats huddled in intense discussion. European Union representatives frantically typing on their devices. African coalition members already heading for the exits. This is Roberts. Implementation of Protocol Dark Shield. Effective immediately. They're not here for diplomacy anymore. Amanda hurried after the general, her mind racing. The Mazzari had revealed exactly what she'd feared, a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. They saw humanity's military history as a weakness, our adaptability in combat as a flaw rather than a strength. They'll start with orbital strikes, Roberts muttered as they rushed toward the emergency command center beneath the UN building. They love their fancy energy weapons and think knocking out our satellites will leave us blind and desperate. They don't understand us at all, do they? Amanda matched his pace, her scientist's mind already analyzing the Mazzari's fatal assumptions. Their entire empire evolved through space combat. They never had to fight for resources on the ground. Roberts allowed himself a grim smile. Then they're about to learn why every human army in history still trains for ground warfare. They think they're getting a primitive species that needs guidance. He paused as the bunker's doors sealed behind them. They're about to meet the species that turned an entire planet into a combat training ground. Above them, The first Mizari ships were already moving into position, their crystal lattice hulls gleaming in the sunlight. They had no way of knowing that their advanced sensors were already being fooled by decades-old human countermeasures, or that their perfect battle computers were about to encounter something they'd never been programmed to handle: human unpredictability. Colonel Kate Winters stood at the window of Chicago's Emergency Operations Center, watching the city's gleaming skyline. The late autumn sunset painted the buildings in shades of gold and crimson, a beautiful sight that might be the last normal evening they'd have for a long time. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman in her early 40s, weathered by experience, but still standing straight-backed in her combat uniform. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez called from her station. "Mizari vessels are taking up positions. Orbital tracking shows them spreading out over major population centers." Kate didn't turn around. Status of Operation Thravac. National Guard units have completed their equipment distribution. We've got Vietnam-era radio sets deployed to all forward positions, and the bicycle courier networks are ready. Sarah's voice held a note of pride. "Just like you planned. They won't see it coming." The first flash lit up the sky like purple lightning. Kate watched as Chicago's modern power grid crumpled under the Mizari's energy weapons. Block by block, the city went dark. Emergency generators kicked in at key facilities, but those weren't meant to power a metropolis. "They're hitting the satellites," Major Tom Peterson reported from the communications station. "GPS is gone. Cell networks are dropping. Internet backbone is. There it goes." He paused, then grinned. "Shortwave network is operational, getting confirmations from all sectors." Kate finally turned from the window, her face illuminated by the battery-powered tactical displays. "Send the signal. The old ways still work." Across the darkened city, something remarkable was happening. While civilians huddled in their homes, military units were executing a plan that would have seemed insane just days ago. Soldiers unpacked equipment that belonged in museums: field telephones, signal mirrors, and Morse code machines. Civilian ham radio operators, integrated into the emergency response network, began passing messages using frequencies the Mizari had dismissed as atmospheric noise. "First contact reports coming in," Sarah announced. "Mizari ground forces are landing in the designated zones. They're broadcasting surrender demands on all digital frequencies." "But we're not using digital anymore, are we?" Kate allowed herself a small smile. Status of the Lake Michigan Special Operations Team. "In position with the modified fishing boats." Tom checked his paper maps, illuminated by battery lamps. "They're ready to move on your command." The building shuddered as another energy blast hit somewhere in the city. The Mizari were being thorough, methodically destroying any technology that they thought humans needed to fight. They didn't understand that humans had been fighting long before electronics existed. "Echo Company reports their first success," Sarah said, her voice excited. Mizari patrol walked right past their position. Their sensors didn't register our troops as combatants without powered armor or energy weapons. Kate moved to the central planning table, where a physical map of Chicago lay spread out, marked with colored pins and string. "No computers needed, no power required. Execute Phase 2. Let's show them why we never stopped teaching soldiers to read paper maps and use compasses." Around the city, human forces began to move. National Guard units, equipped with simple but effective gear, melted into the urban landscape. Special forces teams, trading their high-tech equipment for tried-and-true methods, prepared ambush positions. The bicycle messengers, looking like ordinary civilians, began their rounds carrying encrypted messages written in good old-fashioned code. "Ma'am," Tom called out, "Mizari command ship is broadcasting. They're confused, asking why we haven't attempted to restore our networks or launch cyber counterattacks." "Send them nothing," Kate ordered. "Let them wonder. They think they blinded us by taking out our technology. Time to show them that humans learned to fight in the dark a very long time ago." The night grew deeper over Chicago as more systems failed under the Mizari assault. But in the darkness, human forces were more active than ever. Kate watched from her command post as her troops executed a strategy the aliens couldn't comprehend, fighting without relying on advanced technology. Message from command. Sarah reported, reading from a slip of paper delivered by runner. Other cities report similar success. The Mizari are starting to realize their orbital strikes didn't have the expected effect. Good, Kate nodded, studying her map. Let them learn the hard way. They thought turning off our lights would leave us helpless. Instead, they just gave us the perfect cover for what's coming next. Lieutenant Mike Rodriguez pressed himself deeper into the Virginia mud, watching through his scope as the Mizari landing craft descended through the morning mist. Their crystalline ships sparkled like diamonds, creating rainbow refractions in the rain-heavy air. Beautiful, but they made perfect targets against the gray sky. Status check, he whispered into his throat mic, using the old-school radio frequencies that the aliens ignored as background noise. Thunder team in position, came the reply, barely audible above the rain pattering on leaves. Peters has eyes on their landing zone. You should see their pretty suits, sir. They're all chrome and lights, like walking disco balls. Rodriguez allowed himself a small grin. The Mizari had chosen this landing zone because their scans showed it was optimal terrain, a relatively flat area with good visibility. What their scans hadn't told them was that 3 days of constant rain had turned the Virginia soil into a treacherous quagmire. The first Mizari troops emerged from their ship with military precision, their powered armor humming with energy fields. They moved in perfect formation, exactly as their combat simulations had taught them. Then the first soldiers stepped onto the mud. "Oh, this is gonna be good," Sergeant Sarah Miller whispered from her position to Rodriguez's right. The alien warrior's foot slipped, sending them sprawling face-first into the mud. Their energy shield flared brilliantly, attempting to repel the earth itself. 2 more troops moved to help their fallen comrade, only to lose their own footing. Their advanced armor, designed for the sterile environments of space stations and artificial worlds, began to short out as mud worked its way into the joints. "All teams, execute Operation Mudslide," Rodriguez commanded. The response was immediate and devastating. Hidden M4 carbines opened up from multiple positions, their simple kinetic rounds passing straight through the Mizari's energy shields. Defensive systems designed to stop plasma weapons and energy beams, not primitive bullets. The aliens' formation broke as they sought cover, but the mud prevented them from moving effectively. "They're calling their ship for support," Miller reported, monitoring their communications. "Wait, they can't get clear targeting data through the rain and mist. Their sensors are confused by the water droplets." Rodriguez watched as the Mizari's advantages crumbled one by one. Their powered armor, sluggish and malfunctioning in the mud, made them easy targets. Their advanced targeting systems, unable to handle the natural interference of Earth's weather, left them firing blindly into the trees. Meanwhile, his rangers, wearing simple waterproof gear and relying on practiced skill rather than technology, moved through the battlefield like ghosts. "Thunder Team, deploy the surprises," he ordered. Small devices rolled down the muddy slopes toward the Mizari position. They weren't high-tech explosives or energy weapons, just simple grenades filled with more mud and water. The detonations sprayed the aliens with more conductive earth, further shorting out their systems. "Sir," Private James Cooper's voice crackled over the radio. "They're retreating to their ship. But," he paused, chuckling, "they can't get back up the boarding ramp. It's too slippery." The Mizari commander was frantically trying to restore order, but their entire tactical doctrine was falling apart. Their ships couldn't provide air support through the rain and mist. Their armor was failing, bogged down in terrain they'd never trained for. And their enemy, these primitive humans, seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. "All teams, close the net," Rodriguez commanded. He switched to his backup radio frequency. Another lesson learned from centuries of warfare: never rely on just one communication method. "Command, this is Ranger Actual. Phase 1 complete. Mizari ground forces are ineffective in adverse weather conditions, requesting permission to demonstrate why humans still train in the rain. The response came back immediately. Permission granted. Show them why Earth belongs to us. Rodriguez raised his hand, then dropped it. Around the landing zone, dozens of rangers emerged from their hiding spots, moving with practiced ease through the mud and rain. They had trained for this their entire careers, fighting in every weather condition Earth could throw at them. The Mizari never stood a chance. Their superior technology, their advanced weapons, their tactical AI, none of it mattered in the face of simple mud and rain, and the humans who had mastered fighting in both. Command, Rodriguez reported later, standing over the captured Mizari troops. You might want to send some towels with the prisoner transport. And maybe a copy of Earth's weather reports. I think our visitors need to understand what they're really up against. Captain Jessica Hayes lay motionless in her ghillie suit, watching through night vision goggles as the Mizari patrol passed within 3 feet of her position. Their crystalline armor gleamed faintly in the moonlight, beautiful but completely impractical for stealth operations. The aliens swept their sensor arrays back and forth, searching for the humans their combat computers insisted must be nearby. Nothing on scans, one soldier reported in their clicking language, which Jessica's captured translator rendered into English. But that's impossible. The humans must be maintaining a base in this region. They were right about the base, wrong about finding it. All units, execute Operation Phantom. Jessica whispered into her subvocal mic, the sound carrying to her hidden teams through buried copper wire. Not radio waves for the aliens to detect, just simple electrical current through metal. Sometimes the old ways worked best. The forest erupted with sound. Bird calls, snapping twigs and rustling leaves came from every direction. The Mizari spun around, their weapons tracking phantom noises. Jessica smiled as she remembered the hours her teams had spent studying local wildlife to perfect these imitations. Multiple contacts. The Mizari commander shouted. No, wait. Sensor ghosts. The readings keep changing. Small speakers, salvaged from children's toys and powered by watch batteries, played recorded squad movements from scattered locations. Heat packs tied to tree branches created false thermal signatures. Simple mirrors on fishing line reflected the aliens' own scanning beams back at them. Their combat predictive software is failing. Technical Sergeant Mark Wilson reported through the wire network. They're getting too many conflicting data points. Jessica watched as the Mizari patrol's perfect formation began to break down. Their reliance on technology was becoming their greatest weakness. Every false reading, every phantom sound, every ghost image forced their battle computers to recalculate, trying to make sense of warfare that didn't follow their mathematical models. Team 2, initiate sonic disruption, she ordered. Deep in the forest, Private Emma Chen activated a device that would have made her grandfather proud. A mechanical wind chime, modified to produce frequencies that interfered with Mizari communications. No power signature to detect, just metal and wind. The aliens' formation tightened as their comms filled with static. They switched to backup frequencies, only to find those cluttered with random noise. Actually recordings of old trucker CB radio conversations that their translation software frantically tried to decode. They're reaching their stress threshold, Wilson reported with satisfaction. Their psych profiles show they can't handle prolonged uncertainty. Jessica keyed her mic again. All units, begin Phase 2. Show them why humans still train in psychological warfare. Around the patrol, shadows began to move. Members of Jessica's team, covered in light-absorbing material, darted between trees. They were visible for split seconds, just long enough to register on Mizari sensors before vanishing again. The aliens' combat computers struggled to track targets that appeared and disappeared at random, violating their established patterns of movement. Impossible reading at bearing 270. A Mizari soldier called out. Human signatures appearing inside solid objects. Jessica grinned. Those would be the mannequins her team had buried days ago. heated by chemical packs to match human thermal signatures. The Mazari sensors, designed to detect power sources and energy weapons, were being defeated by department store dummies and hand warmers. The final stroke came when her teams began their acoustic assault. Hidden speakers played recordings of human laughter, whispered conversations in multiple languages, and the sounds of weapons being loaded, all carefully positioned to seem like they were coming from impossible locations. The Mazari patrol finally broke. Their perfect formation dissolved into chaos as soldiers fired at shadows and sensors reported phantom targets in every direction. Their commander, unable to establish any coherent pattern to the attacks, ordered an immediate retreat. "Command, this is Ghost Leader," Jessica reported through the secure landline once the aliens were gone. Psychological warfare tactics confirmed effective. The enemy cannot handle warfare without clear data points. They expect us to fight like machines. Instead, we're teaching them to fear the dark. The response crackled back through her handset. "Excellent work, Ghost Leader. Continue operations. Let them chase shadows while we prepare the real surprise." Jessica smiled as she watched her team retrieve their simple but effective tools. The Mazari would return, of course, with new sensors and updated combat protocols. But they'd never truly be ready for humans' endless capacity to improvise, to turn their own technology against them, to fight with creativity instead of computation. "Time to move, people," she ordered. "Let's go remind them why mankind's ghost stories have always been about what's hiding in the dark." Staff Sergeant Tom Jackson studied the gathering storm clouds from his position high in the Rockies, his weathered face creasing into a smile. The Mazari might rule the skies, but they didn't understand them. Not like his mountain warfare unit did. Barometric pressures dropping fast. "Sarge," Private Lisa Reynolds reported, checking her old-fashioned analog instruments. "Storm's going to be a big one. Temperature differential is perfect for avalanche conditions. Exactly what we've been waiting for." Tom lowered his binoculars, watching the Mazari convoy wind its way up the mountain road below. Their crystalline vehicles glowed with internal energy, beautiful but completely unsuited for the treacherous mountain terrain. "How are our guests handling the altitude?" Master Sergeant Derek Williams chuckled from his observation post. "Third vehicle just had to stop again. Looks like their breathing apparatus isn't compensating properly for the thin air. They keep trying to adjust their atmospheric processors, but they're not designed for natural pressure variations." The Mazari had chosen this route because their sensors indicated it was the most stable path through the mountains. They hadn't counted on humans having spent centuries learning which slopes were actually stable and which ones could be convinced to come crashing down with just a little encouragement. "All units, check in," Tom ordered through his throat mic. "Remember, no powered devices except for essential comms. We do this the old-school way." Acknowledgments came back from teams hidden throughout the valley. Each was equipped with simple tools that had served mountain troops for generations. Avalanche cords, snow shovels, and carefully positioned charges that would appear as nothing more than natural mineral deposits to alien scanners. "Sir," Reynolds whispered urgently, "they've stopped the convoy. Their sensors must be picking up something." Tom watched through his binoculars as the Mazari troops emerged from their vehicles, their crystalline armor struggling to adapt to the rapidly dropping temperature. The aliens' movements were becoming sluggish, their joints stiffening in the cold they'd never evolved to handle. "They're deploying atmospheric shields," Williams reported, "trying to create a bubble of their own environment. But they're burning through power fast to maintain it. Time to introduce them to a real Rocky Mountain welcome." Tom grinned. "Execute Operation Avalanche." The first sign something was wrong came when the Mazari sensors detected movement high above them. Their combat computers registered the falling snow as a minor environmental hazard, easily deflected by their energy shields. What their computers didn't understand was the sheer mass of a full mountain slope of snow and ice. "Charges set," Reynolds confirmed. "Natural gas pockets are ready to blow. They'll think it's just thermal expansion from the temperature changes." Tom keyed his radio once, signaling all teams. Above the convoy, Carefully placed charges detonated silently under the snow. To Mizari sensors, it would appear as nothing more than natural geological activity. The result, however, was anything but natural. The mountains seemed to come alive. Tons of snow and ice broke free, gaining momentum as they thundered down the slopes. The Mizari's energy shields, designed to repel energy weapons and projectiles, proved useless against the overwhelming force of nature. Their vehicles are trying to transform for aerial escape, Williams called out, but the cold has affected their metamorphic circuits. They're stuck in ground mode. Tom watched as the avalanche engulfed the convoy. The Mizari troops, trained for space combat and orbital warfare, had no concept of how to handle Earth's natural fury. Their advanced technology, their sophisticated battle computers, their perfect tactical formations, all meant nothing against the simple power of gravity and frozen water. "Command, this is Mountain Actual," Tom reported through the secure line. "Phase 1 complete. Enemy convoy neutralized without firing a single shot. Mother Nature sends her regards." As his teams moved in to secure the trapped vehicles, Tom couldn't help but feel a touch of sympathy for the Mizari. They had come to Earth expecting to find primitive warriors wielding crude weapons. Instead, they were learning that humans had mastered something far more powerful, the ability to turn an entire planet's environment into a weapon. "Sir," Reynolds called out, checking her instruments again. "Second storm front moving in. Temperatures dropping even faster now." "Good," Tom nodded, watching the Mizari troops struggling in the deep snow. "Let's show them why humans never stop teaching cold weather survival. Sometimes the deadliest weapon isn't what you carry. It's understanding where you're fighting." Major David Miller crouched behind the burned-out hulk of a city bus, watching Denver's skyline through his binoculars. Dawn painted the buildings in shades of red and gold, glinting off the crystalline architecture of the Mizari command post they'd established in the downtown financial district. "Status report," he whispered into his command net, the old-style radio frequencies crackling with encrypted chatter. "Hammer team in position." Lieutenant Jennifer Carter reported from her Abrams tank, hidden in an underground parking structure. "All 6 tanks fueled and ready. These aliens still haven't figured out how to detect diesel engines." "Anvil team set," came Sergeant Michael Thompson's voice. "Artillery pieces camouflaged in the construction site. Old-school powder charges only, just like you ordered. No electronic signatures to detect." Miller smiled grimly. Operation Rolling Thunder was about to teach the Mizari why humans had never abandoned conventional warfare. The aliens had occupied Denver expecting to face desperate resistance with energy weapons and digital attacks. Instead, they were about to meet the full force of combined arms tactics refined through centuries of urban combat. "All strike teams check in," Miller ordered, watching Mizari patrols glide past his position, their sensors sweeping for power signatures they'd never find. "Thunder 1, ready. Marines with conventional weapons. Thunder 2, in position. Army infantry with anti-tank weapons. Thunder 3, standing by. National Guard snipers in the high-rises." The Mizari had established their command post in the Denver Financial Center, confident their energy shields could repel any attack. They hadn't realized that humans had centuries of experience in bringing down buildings, with or without advanced technology. "Command, this is Thunder Actual," Miller reported through the secure landline. "All units in position. Requesting permission to execute Operation Rolling Thunder." The response came back immediately. "Permission granted. Show them why we still teach urban warfare." Miller raised his hand, then dropped it. "All units, commence Thunder Run." The first indication something was wrong came when the Mizari's perimeter sensors detected vibrations in the ground. Their combat computers dismissed it as minor seismic activity, right until Jennifer's tanks burst from their hiding spots, their diesel engines roaring to life. "Hammer team, engage," she shouted. The parking structure's walls exploded outward as 6 Abrams tanks fired simultaneously, their kinetic rounds passing straight through the Mizari's energy shields. The aliens had never encountered weapons that relied on simple physics rather than energy projection. Their shields are adapting. A forward observer called out. They're trying to reconfigure for kinetic impacts. That's why we don't rely on just one type of attack. Miller grinned. Anvil team, your turn. The construction site erupted as concealed artillery pieces opened up, launching shells in high arcs over the buildings. The Missouri's combat computers, programmed for linear energy weapon attacks, couldn't track the ballistic trajectories fast enough to intercept them. Thunder teams, execute urban warfare protocols, Miller commanded. The city came alive with coordinated chaos. Marines burst from sewers and maintenance tunnels, engaging the confused alien troops at close range. Army teams launched wire-guided missiles from windows and rooftops. National Guard snipers began picking off Missouri commanders from positions the aliens' vertical scanning sensors had missed. They're trying to call in orbital support, Thompson reported with a laugh. The downtown canyons are blocking their signals. They never figured out why we still train for fighting without satellite coverage. Miller watched as the carefully orchestrated assault unfolded. The Missouri troops, unable to maintain formation in the confined streets, found their advanced weapons actually working against them. Energy beams reflected off windows, their own shields bouncing attacks back at them. Their perfect tactical formations meant nothing in the urban maze of Denver's streets. Their command post is falling back, Jennifer reported. They're learning the hard way why we never abandon tanks. You can't hack 100 tons of rolling steel. Command, this is Thunder Actual, Miller reported as he watched the Missouri's perfect occupation crumble into chaos. Operation Rolling Thunder is successful. Enemy forces are in full retreat. Turns out they never learned what every human army knows. Cities are the great equalizer. Technology means nothing when you're fighting building to building. As the sun rose fully over Denver, the sound of human victory echoed through the streets. The Missouri had come expecting to find primitives playing at war. Instead, they'd found masters of urban combat who turned their own city into a weapon. General Rebecca Marshall stood before the Missouri High Command, her combat uniform still carrying traces of earth and gunpowder. The crystalline chamber aboard their flagship hummed with energy, but the aliens' usual air of superiority had vanished. Defeat had a way of teaching humility. You requested this meeting to understand why you're losing, Rebecca began, her voice steady. The answer is simple. You forgot the fundamental truth of warfare. Technology doesn't make the warrior. Experience does. She gestured, and the holographic displays activated, showing footage from training grounds across Earth. The Missouri commanders leaned forward, their four eyes widening as they watched. This is Fort Benning, Georgia, Rebecca narrated, where human soldiers learned to fight in swamps and dense forests. The footage showed troops crawling through mud, navigating by compass, and setting ambushes. No power armor. No energy shields. Just humans learning to use their environment as a weapon. Chief Commander Vexel clicked his mandibles. Primitive training. Yet our reports show your forces consistently evade our most advanced detection systems. Because we never stopped learning the old ways, Rebecca smiled. This is the Marine Mountain Warfare Training Center. New footage showed troops scaling cliffs, surviving blizzards, and conducting combat operations in whiteout conditions. Your forces tried to occupy our mountains, but you never learned how to read avalanche conditions or survive at high altitude. The chamber filled with murmurs as more footage played. Navy SEALs training in Arctic waters. Army Rangers conducting urban warfare exercises. Special forces practicing ghost tactics in dense jungle. Each environment required different skills, Rebecca continued. Different weapons, different tactics. While your empire focused on perfecting space combat, humanity kept preparing for every type of warfare imaginable. She pulled a simple compass from her pocket, placing it on the central display table. Your sensors failed in our cities because urban canyons block signals. But this never fails. We still teach every soldier how to navigate with tools that worked centuries ago. Impossible, one of the junior commanders burst out. Our combat simulations show. Your simulations are perfect for space battles, Rebecca interrupted. But ground combat isn't about perfection. It's about adaptation. She brought up new footage. Mizari troops floundering in mud while human soldiers moved efficiently through the same terrain. You built your military to fight the perfect way. We built ours to fight in any way necessary. The final footage showed scenes from the recent battles. Mizari forces retreating from simple kinetic weapons their shields couldn't stop. Advanced combat computers failing to predict human guerrilla tactics. Crystalline vehicles immobilized by basic terrain obstacles. This is why you're losing, Rebecca declared. Not because we're stronger or more advanced, but because we never forgot that the greatest weapon isn't technology, it's knowledge. Every defeat you've suffered was taught to us by history. She gestured to her uniform. You see primitive fabric armor. I see protection tested in 1,000 battles. You see outdated projectile weapons. I see reliability that never depends on power sources. You see inferior technology. I see warriors who can fight with everything or nothing. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Mizari had expected to find a species struggling to reach their level of advancement. Instead, they'd found one that had mastered something far more valuable: the ability to wage war under any conditions. Our analysts calculate it would take 50 years to pacify your forces, Chief Commander Vexol finally admitted. Even with orbital superiority. Longer, Rebecca corrected, because every day you fight us, we learn to fight you better. While every day you spend here, your forces become more dependent on technology that doesn't work on Earth. She straightened, her posture reflecting centuries of military tradition. You came to teach us about advanced warfare. Instead, you're learning why humanity never stopped teaching the basics. We don't need perfect weapons or unbeatable tactics. We just need to be ready for anything. The Mizari High Command exchanged glances, their crystalline armor dimming in what Rebecca had learned to recognize as submission. They had come seeking to understand their defeat. They had found something far more valuable: the true meaning of warfare. Master Sergeant William Cooper watched with barely concealed amusement as a Mizari Special Forces trainee face-planted into the Georgia mud for the third time. 6 months after the peace treaty, the same training grounds that had prepared human soldiers for centuries were now teaching alien warriors the basics of ground combat. Up and at it again, Kexri, he called out encouragingly. Remember what I taught you about weight distribution in soft terrain. The Mizari warrior pushed himself up, his once pristine crystalline armor now thoroughly caked with red clay. This planetary surface is problematic, Master Sergeant. Kexri clicked through his translator. Our combat simulations never accounted for such variables. That's because you can't simulate experience, William replied, demonstrating the proper movement technique. Every environment has its own rules. Mud, snow, desert sand. They all demand different approaches. Across the training field, other human instructors were working with their alien students. Captain Sarah Martinez was teaching a group of Mizari scouts how to navigate using nothing but stars and a compass. Sergeant John Peterson had his trainees learning to maintain their weapons in adverse conditions without relying on automated systems. Incoming, a voice called out from the tree line. William watched with pride as Kexri immediately dropped into the mud, finally using it as cover rather than fighting against it. The other Mizari trainees followed suit, their movements becoming more natural with each exercise. Better, William nodded. Much better. You're starting to understand why we train in real conditions instead of simulations. A Mizari command shuttle descended from the clouds, its crystalline structure now modified with Earth-inspired practical additions. Metal reinforcement protected vital components from environmental damage, and the landing gear had been redesigned to handle rough terrain. Ambassador Vexul emerged, accompanied by General Rebecca Marshall. The two made an odd pair, the alien diplomat in his ceremonial robes and the human general in her practical combat uniform. But they moved with the easy confidence of trusted partners. The exchange program exceeds expectations, Vexol announced, watching his troops train. Our forces are learning adaptation techniques that millennia of space combat never taught us. Rebecca smiled. And your technology is revolutionizing our capabilities, Ambassador. The key was finding the right balance between innovation and tradition. William led his group to the next training station, where retired Marine Corps Sergeant Emily Chen was teaching hand-to-hand combat. The sight of Mizari warriors learning human martial arts would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Your species possesses something remarkable, Kekshri commented as they walked. You never abandoned the old ways while embracing the new. Our empire. We forgot that progress doesn't always mean replacement. That's because we learned the hard way, William explained. Every war, every battle, every conflict taught us that technology can fail. When it does, you need fundamental skills to fall back on. The training ground buzzed with activity as human and Mizari forces worked together. Engineers from both species collaborated on new hybrid weapons that combined alien energy systems with human reliability. Medical teams exchanged knowledge about treating injuries in different environments. Look there, William pointed to where a Mizari tech was helping modify standard human combat gear with crystalline reinforcement. That's the future. Not one species teaching the other, but both learning together. Rebecca and Vexol approached their position. Master Sergeant, the general called out. How are our students progressing? They're learning, ma'am, William reported with pride. More importantly, they're understanding. It's not just about the techniques, it's about the mindset. Indeed, Vexol agreed. My troops report that their combat effectiveness has increased beyond projected parameters. They're learning to think beyond their programming. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the training field as the day's exercises concluded. Human and Mizari forces gathered together, sharing stories and lessons learned. The fear and hostility of 6 months ago had been replaced by mutual respect and understanding. You know what the best part is? William asked his alien student. Next month, some of us are heading up to your orbital stations to learn space combat. Turns out we both had something to teach each other. Kekshri nodded, his translator conveying a tone of satisfaction. As your human saying goes, Master Sergeant, the best of both worlds.